Alrighty, welcome to the first edition of Beyond Combat. My name is Nick Baldwin. I am your host, and Beyond Combat is a new show. I'm trying to bring together MMA and the real world. We see so many MMA shows nowadays. I have one myself. It's called the Mma Circus. You might have seen it before if you're familiar with this YouTube channel. And it's the same old. We talk about, right now we're talking Donald Cerrone versus Darren Till, and Ian McCall just signed with Ryzen, and it's all good, but it's sort of the same old. It's repetitive, and I wanted to try something different. I wanted to bring together the sport I love, the sport all of my guests love, but also talk about what my guests do outside of MMA. When they're not MMAing, what are they doing? Well, we'll bring people on every time we do the show. So it'll be Wednesdays around 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern, and we'll talk outside MMA careers, hobbies, etc. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My first guest this week, my first ever guest, and interestingly, he was my second guest actually, on my first podcast, the Mma Circus. He was on episode 1, the second guest. The first ever was Mitch Clark, former UFC lightweight. It is MMAsucker.com founder Jeremy Brand. Jeremy, thank you very much for the time and for being here. I know you yourself were a podcaster, and you sort of dipped out of that, so I guess it's pretty cool that you're getting back into it a little bit.
Well, back into it on your show right now.
As a guest, once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while. Man, I've been podcasting for the better half of 8 years, 9 years. Heck, you were not even double digits back then.
You had no idea who I was, and I was basically in a crib.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So as you said, I've sort of taken a step back just because, life sort of gets in the way. I actually messaged you when you were talking about this earlier today and said, maybe I might have something, up my sleeve for the not so distant future. Heck, it might even drop tomorrow, the first episode of this sort of show that I'm going to do. It's a morning drive show. It could be fun. It could be
very
fun.
Interesting. Very interesting. Hopefully that's not MMA, because we're not allowed to talk about mixed martial arts on this show. That is the sole purpose of this show, Beyond Combat, to literally go beyond combat sports, whether it be MMA, kickboxing. We're going to talk about none of that. Maybe maybe we'll slip up a little bit here and there early on, but we'll avoid that as much as possible, because I talk too much about MMA. You at one point talked way too much about MMA. We both write about it way too much. So I think this is going to be a bit of fun. And also, I want to prove the Mma Circus co-host, Andrew Lawrence, wrong, because the running joke, not just on the Mma Circus, but in general on Twitter, is that I know nothing about MMA. So my goal is to prove everybody wrong, that I can have a discussion about something not face punching related. Maybe this will be an epic fail. Maybe this won't work out, but maybe it will be a bit of fun. Maybe it will be interesting to listen to. And that's my hope. I don't care how big this gets, because ultimately, one guy mentioned this on Twitter. It would be this would be a lot more exciting if I was, say, talking to fighters about what they do. The only problem with that is that most fighters, the majority of them, they train, they sleep, they eat, they spend time with their family, and that's about it. So there's a lot of MMA personalities out there and pundits like yourself that do have an interesting hobby or an interesting career. And so that's where I got this from. I've actually had the idea to do Beyond Combat for about a year. You may recall, I don't know if I was talking to you about this. I think I was trying to come up with names a year ago. This is
it wasn't even just the podcast though. You wanted to drop a whole entire website on Beyond Combat.
You might be getting mixed up with Cage Tips. I've had a few ideas over the years, but this has been in the works for a little bit. I think it's going to be fun. Liam Hughes is in the YouTube chat right now, and he's a longtime listener of the Mma Circus. He wants us on the Mma Circus. Andrew and I, we always start out the show with talking about weather. It's just something we started one day. We can't stop. It's always so exciting. You're in Vancouver. I'm in Winnipeg. We're both Canadians. The average non-Canadian thinks right now we're both living in the tundra, but I suspect that's not quite the case. Vancouver, are you still living in the summer temperatures, or is it getting a little cooler?
It's starting to move. We're lucky in Vancouver. We have all 4 seasons. Most parts of Canada get summer and winter. That's about it. We're diving into the fall season right now. Leaves are starting to change. Leaves are starting to drop. Today we had absolute torrential downpours. Didn't stop at all during the day. I took the dog out for a walk like 2 seconds ago before we hopped on here, and I walked in and I was drenched. Like, the downpour was crazy. From the sounds of it, our winter is going to start fairly early this year. It's that La Nina kicking in. And last winter, Vancouver had a very bad one. Like, we got dumped on. You, what am I talking about? You know winter. You're in Winnipeg, man. The U.S. Yeah. I just about slipped up there and talked about MMA.
Oh.
But Winnipeg is known for, their winters. And Vancouver, despite everyone thinking, yeah, we live in Canada, it's always winter, we live in igloos and whatnot, Vancouver tends to, like, some years we don't even get snow. Last year was insane for the snowfall, and it sounds like this year we're going to be hit with some snow as well. But we were in for a hot summer this year. Like, we lucked out with that as well. So it's sort of a double-edged sword when it comes to weather right now. We wanted rain because we didn't have any rain over the summer, and now that we got it, we're hating it.
Yeah, so Winnipeg right now is it's up and down. It always is. It's a little bit cool one day. We got snow on Saturday. A few days ago, we had snow. They woke up and the ground was white. It didn't last, hour. It lasted a few hours, but it's getting a bit colder. Today, super windy. Apparently in parts of Manitoba, up to 90 to 110 kilometers per hour wind. That's that's a lot.
Speaking of wind, yeah, I had no need to interrupt you there, but my sister-in-law lives in a tiny town just outside of Dawson Creek, which is up north in BC, called Farmington. Not even on a map, probably. It's that small. And last night we got a phone call at 5:30. It was hail, rain, wind. Out of nowhere, friggin' tornado flies through her yard. Oh, wow. She had a trampoline fly up into the air, 200 feet into the air, and fly down. Her swimming pool was an absolute wreck. They found furniture, patio furniture, like half a kilometer away from their house. She's not part of Tornado Alley, like a lot of the prairies and whatnot. She's in British Columbia, where very rarely do tornadoes happen. So, like, you could search for this stuff on the internet and not even hear about it. It's absolutely crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, I guess I've only lived through one tornado. Years ago, we were going camping, and about halfway there, there's something long and dark in the sky. Oh, it's moving and it's coming towards us. Okay, let's take shelter. Broke apart. It was all good, and we continued on our way. But yeah, so now BC, your friend's life has she's lived through just as many tornadoes I have. But of course, that doesn't mean much because most people like to say I'm 5 years old. So that is that. By the way, listeners, if you have any questions for us throughout the show, just drop it into the YouTube chat, and I will check it once in a while, and we will answer your questions when they come in or at a good time or closer to the end of the show. We already got a couple from Liam Hughes, kind of unrelated to what we're mainly going to talk about on the show today. He says, ask the guy, because I guess he doesn't know who you are, ask the guy his first paid job. That's usually good for a story.
First paid job. My first paid job, legitimate paid job, I refereed ice hockey when I was about 13 or 14, started refereeing ice hockey. But if you want to talk about like work where I actually had to head to work and do that, I was a dish pig at a restaurant in Stanley Park in Vancouver called the Tea House. A buddy of mine's mom was the head chef there, and he was doing some line cooking there and whatnot, and that guy has actually gone on and he won Chopped Canada now, and he's a pretty big deal in Toronto. He's in Toronto at a hotel over there, head chef or executive chef, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I was a dish pig, and dishes come back. It was probably one of the shittiest jobs that I've ever had.
Pretty really typical teenager job.
Yeah, but I mean, it stunk. But lucky enough, because it was a 5-star restaurant, every night I got some wicked dinners like duck and lamb and all that kind of stuff. So whatever I wanted, it was sort of at my hands, and I got to eat whatever I wanted for dinner in between washing crust off of dirty dishes.
My first gig, my first and only job is bloodyelbow.com. That is pretty sweet. Quite the irregular teenage job, I must say. But yeah, so that's fun. Never had to gone out to the local McDonald's and serve some burgers. That's something I'm happy about. One last question from Liam right now. Before we move on and talk about what you're doing for your day-to-day job, he says he's wondering what breed of dog you had. You mentioned you just took it for a walk.
Oh, I have you guys will never have heard of it. It's a Korean breed. She's a Tosa Jindo mix, which is a Korean dog. My wife got hooked on looking at those Korean websites to say it was actually called SaveKoreanDogs.org. It's an organization out of there. There's a lady named Nami Kim who rescues dogs from the meat market. And so she was scrolling through the pages and came across this litter of dogs. And after about a month, I was like, stop hounding me on this. Just get one already. So she picked this one. We flew this one and her sister in from Korea. All we had to do was pay the cost of the flight, which was pretty reasonable. Flew her and her sister, and her sister got adopted out to another house here in British Columbia. And yeah.
So they just shipped the dogs like right from Korea to BC?
Yeah, in a crate. So they went through all of the customs and all that stuff in Korea. The crate comes with like stickers all over it from customs and whatnot. So they could do all of the shots, all the paperwork, all the vet stuff, all in Korea before they get shipped. And then they come straight into British Columbia or straight to the airport, wherever you live. They ship them all over the world. This lady saved something like 5,000 dogs from the Korean meat market.
That's incredible. That's crazy.
Yeah, she's now actually stopped her website. Like SaveKoreanDogs.org, I think, is still around, but her Instagram and all that stuff is all taken down because she's actually working for the Korean government now, trying to shut down meat markets completely.
Oh, wow. So going undercover a little bit, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, props to you on that. I mean, a lot of people, even going to your local humane society is great, but man, I mean, saving dogs from the meat market and all that, that's really, really great. And
heck, we're going to Mexico in November, and she's already got it planned that she's going to rescue some dogs on the way home from Mexico.
Gonna take them all home, or just
not to our house,
Okay,
just board them on the plane because they need people to fly them in. So.
Gotcha. Well, anyways, what do you do? Of course, MMA Saka is far from your full-time job. You've had a full-time job ever since you started MMA Saka and covering MMA. You work for the Vancouver School Board. You work with special needs kids, and
I do.
It's really cool. It's it's a job. We'll talk about it. It's a job I feel that, you have to be, in a way, I don't want to call you special. I don't want to, ride your nuts that much, but you have to have something to do that. I feel like you have to have patience, and it's not a job a lot of people could do. And I think you could probably attest to that.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen a lot of people try this job, and a lot of substitutes or whatever you want to call them come in through the doors, and they definitely weren't cut out for the job. Yeah. I've worked with special needs kids for the last 15 years now. So basically the entire time you've been alive, I've been working for the Vancouver School Board. And yeah, it's an interesting gig because each and every year it's sort of a different role. Like I don't work in a classroom just of special needs kids. Like the kids that I work with are integrated into the mainstream classrooms. So the one student that I work with this year is in grade 5, and he's in a typical grade 5-6 class. He's doing all the same work as the rest of the kids. He's actually above a lot of the rest of the kids because he's got a gifted designation as well, along with his autism designation. So it varies every year. Like I might have a kid that's completely off the wall, can't talk, can't do any of this kind of stuff. But then the next year I'm with a kid that is exactly the same as the rest of the kids, but he's beating the shit out of everyone. So, I mean, there's so many different variations in terms of the kids that I can work with that it makes the job on a day-to-day basis. The day goes by so fast because I'm just on my toes and on my feet and all over the place all the time because I just don't know what's around the corner, man. Like I could have a job where every day is exactly the same, like delivering mail or something like that. I'm going to the same houses every single day. Yeah, it's cool. You get some good exercise. Yeah, it's decent pay. But well, it could be, and it could be shitty because, you know, as I said today, torrential downpour. Do I want to deliver mail in that kind of weather? Fuck no. Or in the snow in Winnipeg? No. But this one, it's something that I love to do. I've always sort of enjoyed working with kids and you know, seeing them grow. And so I work in an elementary school. As I said, I'm in a grade 5-6 class this year, and it's rewarding to see these kids grow. And throughout the years, you see that, and it's tough to let them go into high school because you've formed this sort of relationship with these kids, not just the special needs kids, but the typical kids as well. And yeah, it's a really cool gig, man. I as you know, writing about mixed martial arts, which we said we weren't going to talk about, it's something that I love to do. It's something that I've it's something that I can't. Is my mic off or something?
No, you're good.
Oh, you keep putting your hand up to your lip. I'm like, what's going on?
Just a weird thing I do, I suppose. I don't know.
Okay. Well, yeah. So writing about mixed martial arts is something that I love to do. It was a passion project. It's something that came up on a whim a few, like 8 or 9 years ago, that I just started the website. But it was never something that I wanted to do full time. Like, I know that that is your ultimate goal, is to be a mixed martial arts journalist. I've always wanted it to be a hobby. Cool if it's side income. If I get money in on the side, fuck yeah, I love that. I would really want to keep that up and keep the money coming in. But basically, when the money's come in, it's all gone right back out. Like, it's put into the website. It's put into my video stuff that I do. It's put into all that kind of stuff. It's never coming to me, really. And that's because I love what I do on the side, as an on the side kind of job. So I've always wanted to work for the Vancouver School Board. I've always wanted to keep this gig. And even if something does come up where I'm able to do something else, I think I'd always work for them part-time, even if that's the case. You know what I mean?
So you mentioned earlier a gifted designation. You were talking at the time you said that about a kid you either are working with now or worked with previously, a kid who has autism, but is also, you know, beyond everybody else and doing really well in school. By gifted designation, are you just meaning, sure, he has the, you know, autism and a disorder, but he's also inside really, really, you know, intelligent?
Exactly. A gifted designation, a typical person could have a gifted designation. And that just basically means that they're extremely intelligent in an aspect of life or an aspect of academics. So like Rain Man, for instance, was gifted in math. Like, he could do any math problem on a whim. That's sort of like the kid that I'm talking about. His math skills are through the roof. But then his social skills are a little subpar. So there's so many, like, yeah, gifted means you excel in something beyond what the normal or typical student would.
Is that refreshing to work with someone like that who does have, you know, an area where he, as you said, excels at, or is it sort of just you're good with whatever?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm good with whatever. Well, I guess I would say I could work with whatever, but would I want to do toileting? No. Would I want to do feeding and stuff like that? Probably not, because those are cases as well, right? Like, people in wheelchairs, for instance, are kids that we have to work with, and that's not necessarily something that I would dive towards or I would move towards and something that I would want to do. But it makes it a lot easier when the student can do the same work as the rest of the kids in the class, because I'm not on top of them. And oftentimes in classes, there are kids that need more support than these kids that are actually designated. So there are kids that fly right under the radar and don't get the designation that these special needs kids do, but they can't do any of the work that the classroom is doing. So they need to be modified. Their work needs to be completely adapted or modified. And those are the kids that, when I'm not working with the kid that is designated, I'm on top of, kind of thing. And fuck, that didn't sound good at all. Those are the kids that I'm working with. And, you know, like, sometimes they can't even do like simple addition, like 10 plus 12 or something like that. So it's easier when the kids that I work with are on the same program as the rest of the kids in the class, because then I can help the kids that don't necessarily get the same support.
Right. I want to talk about the specifics a little later, but I want to backtrack. Firstly, what is your actual position? Are you like a special ed assistant? Are you a full-on or, you know, what is your formal title, so to speak?
Over the years, the title has changed a hell of a lot. Special education assistant is basically what it is boiled down to. The school right now, I believe the Vancouver School Board calls us SSAs, SSSWs, School and Student Support Worker. Each district has a different name for it or a different title, but as you said, special education assistant is basically the, you know, unanimous role that people would sort of draw to or understand. Like when I went to school, the title was education assistant program. I know that out in Surrey, which is a small town in British Columbia, or small city, actually it's pretty big, but they call them education assistants. So
Okay.
And they're EAs. It varies. Special education assistant is basically what, if I'm putting it into a system on the computer, then that's what it goes by.
And so you are employed by the school board, but you work at just one school, I think is what you said, or do you go school to school? Because my aunt actually has a similar job. I think she focused more on getting special needs kids into the school and that transition. But nonetheless, she goes school to school. She's basically in her car all day, where you're at one school for the whole year. Yes?
Yes, I'm in one school for the full year, but it's not always like that. Like, there's someone that I used to work with that is half-time at one school and half-time at another school. There's people, as I said, substitutes or EOCs, education or educators on call. They basically just take the jobs of people that are sick and then they go into their position for the day or whatnot.
Okay. And okay, so let's backtrack. Why did you want to get into this? Why did you decide, okay, I'm going to be a special ed assistant? You know, has it been something you wanted to do for years before you actually started, or did you just sort of fall into the position? How did this all start?
Well, falling into it isn't really the right word. I was working at a futon shop, building futons, actually, not the frames, but the actual mattresses. I was laying like foam and whatever you want to say, and then putting the futon together. And I was like, fuck, I can't do this for the rest of my life. In fact, the store that I worked for has since closed down, and not too long after I left did they close down. But we were out one night in a buddy's backyard, and this guy that we used to hang out with had just gotten a job with the Vancouver School Board like that year, as a special education assistant. And he's like, I'm an EA, man. It's a cool job. It's pretty chill. I'm like, oh yeah, working with special needs kids is chill? Come on, man. It's like, seriously, get out of here. And he's like, yeah, but it's pretty good pay and stuff too. And, you know, you get Christmas off and you get the summer off. And how can you complain about that? And I'm like, seriously, you're still not selling me, man. And this guy was not the smartest of smarts. And he's like, man, I went to Langara. It's a college out here in BC. It's a 10-month program. You can basically fuck the dog in the program. It's so easy. I'm like, now you're starting to sell me a little bit, man. And I'm like, okay. So me and a buddy of mine looked into it. And this is a buddy of mine I went to high school with, really good friends. Still friends to this day. He took the program as well with me. So we signed up for the program, 10 months, very, very easy. And literally on the day that I graduated from Langara, I graduated at, I think, 10 in the morning or 10:30. I was working at a school at 1 that afternoon. So like they were in desperate need for men within the school board. Women were easy to find, I guess, to do this job, but men they needed at the time. And the fact that this guy was like, man, it's an easy job. It's an easy program. And this guy was like the biggest stoner I knew. So I was like, if he can fly through it, then I guess I should give it a try. And the rest is history.
I wonder why they were at the time so in need of men in this role.
Well,
just coincidence or
no, because well, especially in the elementary school level, like a lot of the men tended to drive towards secondary school. Here in BC, we only have, or here in Vancouver, we only have elementary and secondary. There's no middle school. So it goes K to 7, 8 to 12. And so the men didn't really want to drive in towards the primary or the elementary school. And, you know, there was still like I said earlier, I never wanted to do it and I never have had to do it. Knock on wood here. Work with kids that have needed toileting, but a woman can't do the toileting for a boy or a little boy, and a male cannot do a toileting for a little female. It just doesn't work that way. So there were a lot of females in the elementary school when it came to that kind of stuff, but there were not a lot of males. So that was what sort of was needed.
If it had been, say, a 2-year program, it wasn't super easy, as you said. What, you know, would you be in this job? Do you think you would have found yourself doing this, or would that have been a red flag, or big enough where it's like, okay, I'm finding something else now?
Nah,
because you didn't want to do it, or you weren't, you know.
Well, it was nothing. I didn't even know about it. Like when I was in high school and whatnot, I saw special needs kids walking around and whatnot, but I just didn't know of this role. Like I had no clue that there was such thing as a special education assistant. It was
I suppose that's the difference of growing up in, say, the 80s than the 2000s.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, 80s and 90s. I'm not that old.
All right.
But yeah, yeah, no, I think I still would have done it. It was not, I had never heard of it. I had no, like, it was nothing. It wasn't on my radar. I didn't know that was a job that was even out there. You know, I knew of daycares, I knew of preschools, I knew of that kind of stuff. I didn't know that there was this role of someone else inside the school system that could work with special needs kids. It wasn't sort of in my wheelhouse at the time because I didn't know of it, but I also didn't have anything else that I was sort of striving towards. Like, you know, a lot of my buddies were in school. I had a couple buddies in school for business and sales and whatnot. And, you know, I could do that. I could sell a toothbrush to a toothless guy probably, but it wasn't, I was not sort of in that sort of mind frame where I wanted to go to school for that kind of thing. And this just sort of, you know, piqued my interest. In 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, 10 months, whatever it was, it didn't matter. I was sort of interested in it from the get-go. Once I heard of sort of the job role and job description, the time frame of schooling didn't matter.
This job, more than a lot of jobs out there, I'm not calling you stupid, but you don't need to be Albert Einstein to do this job. There are certain skills. There are many skills you need, and I want you to talk about that. You need, you know, I mean, as I said off the top, I think patience is probably key. You can sort of, you know, say whether or not that's true, but there are certain things you need, but it's not necessarily, you know, Albert Einstein intelligence, right?
Well, no, not Albert Einstein, definitely, or Nick Baldwin, intelligence, I guess, right?
That's the level you need.
I get no, but it depends on where you're working, right? Like if I was working in a high school and I was working with kids that are mainstream and doing, like the kid that I've worked with that is on the same level as the rest of the kids. If that kid goes into high school and he's on the same level as the rest of the kids, I got to be able to do algebra.
Okay, that's a good point. Yes.
You know okay. I mean? Like, so
I guess I was thinking, and this probably isn't true, that there's, I mean, I think the general perception is when if you say, you know, you take a group of special needs kids you've worked with, I think most people would think there's more people that are very lower level and need a lot of help than the ones you talked about. But that, you know, from the way you talk about it, it's probably not true.
No, there's a huge range. And I mean, hell, there's even a new TV show that's out called The Good Doctor about an autistic kid who's working in a hospital as an ER doctor. Like he's a surgeon in the show. And that's very realistic where people can go and they can do that kind of thing where, I mean, because their brains work in a way that like no one else's do, man. And I know that there's a guy who used to work at the video store up the road who might not have been labeled as autistic growing up, but he definitely is. And like, you could walk into that store and not have been in there for 5-6 years, and he would remember your name. He would remember your phone number. It was almost scary that he knew your phone number still, but like he could type it into the computer, and he knew the realm of, you know, the genre of movies that you liked. And he was, so that kind of stuff, like memory and whatnot, it was huge for him. He had computer skills where he could open up a computer and fix it. Like you can't, like any typical kid, you know, like your friends or whatnot, you guys aren't all the same. You guys don't all have the same skills. You're probably smarter than your best buddy in one aspect of life, but he could outdo you in sports or something like that. You know, typical kids aren't all the same. So why would all special needs kids be the same?
That's a good point. As far okay, so right now you mentioned it, but I don't recall who. So you work with just one kid a year? Is that how that works?
It all varies. It depends on how many support staff members there are in a school. So right now we don't have many, but we have a lot of special needs kids. But the kid that I work with is very not needy, but he needs one-on-one support despite being on the same level as the rest of the kids for different and various reasons. But
which are, if you say he's on the same level, then why does
behavior-wise and whatnot?
Okay.
So so it all depends on like the level of, like certain kids get different percentages of support, but so it varies. So like you could have someone that only needs 25% support in the classroom, and then so that person could go from like and work with like 3 or 4 different kids throughout the year kind of thing, and throughout the day even, which actually makes the day go by a hell of a lot quicker as well, right? You bouncing around from different class to different class, and in elementary school, unlike high school, if you're stuck with one kid, you're stuck in the same class all day long.
Right. And that is your case right now.
Yeah, but like we have gym and we have, you know, library and all that kind of stuff.
Move around? I mean, they move to the library, but they stay in the same class as far as your
academic stuff. Yeah, okay. For sure. Yeah.
So specifically this kid, the one you're working with right now, obviously, you know, I don't name names, but if you don't mind talking a little bit more about him, what does he suffer from? What are the main goals that you have as the person, you know, caring for him, so to speak?
I mean, I guess without getting like too personal about this kid, because, you know, not like doctor-patient confidentiality, but I mean, whatever. It's not like they're going to listen to this. Vancouver School Board, hunt me down. Who knows? But like, I mean, social skills, things like that. Like he's at a way lower social level than the typical kid at his level. He's at like a, you know, grade 1, 2 sort of level, and he's in grade 5. So trying to get him onto that same level of not tattletaling and not poking other kids or running up to them and saying, "You're my best friend," and hugging them and whatnot like that. You know, just trying to get them on the same level in terms of their social and peer aspects. That's sort of what I'm working on. And behaviors, like not like if he's asked to do something, then to do it. Like you know, you get asked to do a correction on a worksheet. You don't ask why. You don't have a meltdown and scream and cry and be like, "What the hell?" You just do the correction.
Right.
So that kind of thing.
What do you, I mean, the main two things I think you work with, sort of, you know, an academic side where they're sort of, you know, not quite at level there, or of course behavioral. What to you is more difficult to work with? Is it the behavioral side? Or
I love working with behavior kids, man. It's so funny when they try to beat you up and stuff. I think it's hilarious because, you know, I'm usually much bigger than these kids that I'm working with. So when they try to like throw a punch or a kick or try to hit me or something, I just find it hilarious. And I think that actually calms them down a little, that, you know, the majority of people, when kids come at them or whatnot, they're like, sort of nervous, right? Whereas I'm like, whatever, try it. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy working with a kid that's going to challenge me, and a kid that's going to push me forward and try to get me thinking and ways to you sort of, you know, bring them down a level of anxiety and whatnot.
And as far as the classroom setting, do you typically have good relationships with the other kids that you're not, you know, set to work with?
For sure.
I mean, obviously, it's a class setting, and the teacher's there, and they're all listening. But you're not just chatting up a storm.
No, like today, we played. You know, at the end of the day, we played some silent ball. I don't know if you know what that is, but sit on the desks. You throw a ball around. You got to be quiet. You try to get each other out by dropping the ball and whatnot.
Yeah, I like that game. I've played that game. It's fun.
Yeah, teacher didn't play, but of course, I got up on the desk. I played. You know, in gym class, we got dodgeball going. I'm not going to sit out from a game of dodgeball. Sure. I'm going to hop right in there. So they think, hey, Jeremy's here. He's the cool guy, blah, blah, blah. Right.
And also at one point you did coaching as far as
I coached the basketball team. A few years ago, we had a grappling team at the school. And, this isn't, it's not like I'm not coaching a special needs basketball team or a special needs grappling team, right? Like I'm taking on the role of what a typical coach at the school would do, because at my old school we had not many coaches. None of the teachers wanted to take on that role, so I took on the role the first year I got there. And since we moved schools and sort of combined with another school, I haven't coached at all the last year. But I coached everything from volleyball to soccer to basketball to, as I said, grappling, like submission grappling. Like,
that's crazy that's in an elementary school.
Well, it wasn't actually it wasn't put on by the Vancouver School Board per se. Myself and a guy that I used to train with, he was a teacher at a different elementary school, and then we had a buddy who was a wrestler at a different elementary school. So those three schools decided to do a submission grappling team at each school, and we had like a handful of kids on the team and coached them in the mornings and whatnot, and then came together at a local gym and we competed against each other. And the teachers and staff members, or the three of us actually, would roll with each other as well. It was pretty fun.
As far as the coaching stuff, I would imagine you get paid at least a little bit extra to do that, to spend
nothing. It's all voluntary, man.
Really, I've wondered that, just because my school, previous schools, we all have teams for many sports, and I've always wondered, that person, that teacher who grade 8 social studies, who's spending an extra hour after school, is he actually doing this just for fun? So I mean, obviously it's different probably, but typically.
Yeah, provincially it could be different, but I think the majority is just, I don't think they can take any cash for it. Most of the time it's just voluntary.
That's honestly surprising that, say, the grade 9 math teacher, who might not even love, I mean, with elementary schools, middle schools, what have you have a lot of coaches who are just that, a regular teacher. You gotta wonder, it's surprising they're doing that completely voluntary, but it's good.
Someone's got to do it, right? Like, I mean, you don't want to school.
I guess those are the people that, are willing to step up and be the leader, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, I have a family and whatnot, but a lot of the coaches at the schools usually are, the single people that don't have anyone to go home to because they can stay after school and do all that kind of stuff, right?
Right. Well, anyways, back to the special needs stuff. Do you find your job difficult? Day to day, you said sometimes some students are a bit more challenging. Of course, it's always different. It's a very it's a job full of variation, so to speak. But typically, on an average day, do you find it to be a difficult job?
For the layman, it would be a difficult job. I don't find it to be a difficult job. I've done it for, as I said, the last 15 years. It's just sort of something that I can do. I don't find it to be difficult at all. I find that, to be honest, over the last 15 years, I might have woken up 3 times maybe and said, I don't feel like going to work today. Whereas, the majority of people out there don't like getting up for their jobs, man. I love my job, and I wake up every day and I'm like, do I really want to get out of bed? No, obviously not. But it's not I don't want to not get out of bed because of work. I don't want to get out of bed because bed's comfortable and I like sleep. Each and every day I get up and I want to get to work. I oftentimes I would get to work early and, you know, play basketball with the kids or, you know, stuff like that. I enjoy going to work. A coworker of mine, each and every day, we compare lineups, our DraftKings lineups and whatnot. We play DraftKings every single day, basically, whether we can find a free lineup for, you know, hockey or basketball or soccer or even golf, man. We've done NASCAR free lineups, quarter lineups. We play it every single day. It's stuff like that makes it fun to go into work.
There has to be something, though, in the back of your head that sort of just developed once you hit maybe the 5-year mark or a certain time where it's become just what you do. It's a regular day. You've been at the job for so long. There has to be, though, something in the back of your head that is sort of contributing to that. I enjoy this. I want to get up. I'm not saying you really don't enjoy it, but there has to be something about the kids that are waiting for you. And there's almost like a guilt where if I don't get up, if I do call in sick, there's people relying on me, that people that really do.
For sure. Definitely, man. Because, and that's the thing is, yeah,
and it goes for any teacher.
Not just the kid relying on me, but the other staff members relying on me.
Yeah, that goes for any teacher.
For sure. And
even my grade 12 English teacher, if she doesn't show up, then we, obviously you get a sub, it's
not the same though, right? You know what I mean? Like, well, and kids in grade 12, they mess with substitutes all the time, man. Sure. Like, so, I mean, yeah, and special needs kids are going to try to mess with subs. They're going to try and, you know, poke their buttons and see what they can get away with. So it's not like, obviously something's clicked. Do I know what it was? Probably not.
Sort of
it's
just over a matter of time.
Sort of just happened. Yeah. I've been in the role for so long that something just happened, right? But I mean, when I started working for the school board when I was 21 years old. So there were nights when I was like out partying the night before and getting home at 4 a.m, getting up at 6 a.m. to go to work. Like, I mean,
that was probably a pretty bad day for you.
Depending on the kid I was working with that year, yeah, it very well could be. But that's just what I mean. Like, it was never a hard day, really, man. It's always been fun.
So you mentioned earlier that every kid is different, but that also goes for your staff members, your fellow, workers and the people who, you're also around each and every day. As far as what you do, on a day-to-day with these kids that you work with, say, take your grade 5 or 6 student that you're working with right now who needs, help with his behavior and all that, day-to-day, are you mostly just talking with him, having conversations or trying to and trying to get, words out of him and get his feelings, his thoughts, emotion, all that? I would imagine, considering you're working with, at an elementary level, there's a lot of activities. What specifically do you do with the, with the people you work with?
Well, as I said, he's on
a lot of different things.
Oh yeah. And as I said, he's on the same program as the rest of the kids. So like, I'm just reminding him, get out your book, Okay. Sometimes.
So you're just sitting there sort of, if he needs a reminder.
Well, I'm wandering around the whole class, man. I'm like, I don't hover over top of him. I'm not like there's a lot of people that will like sit down right next to the kid. I'm not that kind of support staff guy. I'm wandering around. I'm helping all the kids that need extra support and whatnot. I'm all over the classroom. I'm all over the school. Like, I'll walk down if the kid that I'm working with is, if he's fine and he's working on something else, I'll wander down to another classroom and just check in on those kids kind of thing if there's no support in that room.
Have there been times, I know you mentioned earlier, I think you said something like mostly you're always in a classroom setting. That's usually where you are. But has there been years where you're working with a kid who, in every school or most schools out there, there's a special ed room where the kids that need a lot of help and aren't on the level at all of other kids are, and they're playing games and getting support. Have you been in that setting before?
Yeah, well, actually, like, when I was at the school that I was at, like, I'm still at the same school, but we had a fire a couple years back and we moved schools. And well, at the old building that I was at, we had what was called an SSW room, which is, school support worker room. where we all had, all the support workers had their desks and whatnot. And there were kids that weren't on the same program as the rest of the kids that we would work with. And myself and this coworker that I said does DraftKings all the time with me, we basically pulled our kids into that room and just did small social groups for like almost the entire day. And, Sorry was the big game that we would play. We played Sorry like dozens and dozens of times throughout the week to get them, socializing with each other and turn taking and whatnot. And we do math and writing and social studies, and we had a Canada group so they could learn about Canada. And this was all done within that small little room where we had like 6 or 7 kids and the 2 of us in there and stuff like that. And we'd take these kids across the street to 7-Eleven to do a little shopping, or over to Safeway and do cooking with them, and they'd shop and whatnot. And so that year, or those couple of years that we had that little group and that stuff, it was really cool because we weren't stuck inside the classroom. And with all the typical kids, we actually had this group of kids that we were sort of molding ourselves, and we got to do sort of basically what we wanted to do. Outings and life skills, and take the SkyTrain, or, teach them how to ride the bus. And it was a cool few years.
That is cool. I feel like obviously playing games and doing certain things in the classroom setting, that the EA room, as you said, is good and you have to do it, but life skills are in my opinion, or what I would think with these kids particularly, is just as important. Going
it's almost
to
way more important. It's almost way more important, man, because as you said, these kids are all on different levels. And as they get older, they start to receive less and less support. And you never know like what's going to happen to them once they finish high school, right? So they're going to need to know how to ride the bus. They're going to need to know how to go to the store and buy food. They're going to need to know how to go to the library or do that kind of stuff. So those are skills that these kids need more than a lot of the academic support.
Is it difficult? You mentioned earlier a while back that sure, it is difficult, saying goodbye. On the other side, on the flip side, do you think it's difficult for the kids you worked with? So say you worked with, maybe there's a time when you work with, a kid for grade 6 and 7, his last 2 years at school, he becomes very familiar with you. If he, do you think it's difficult for, he or she to say goodbye and move on to high school?
Some of them don't have any bond whatsoever, I don't think. Sure. Some of them have, very little emotional attachment.
It depends what level they're at for certain things.
Yeah, and I think that even though they might not show it, or even though they might not say it or sense it, it might come out because as I said, in high school, the support is completely different. The classroom settings are completely different. It all varies. It's completely different in different.
How difficult is that jump for them, do you think?
Oh, I think it's huge. But the difference is a lot of these kids that are mainstream in elementary school will still go into a program in high school where they're in a small classroom setting. If they're high enough skills, they'll get platooned out to a class that they can do. But a lot of them end up in smaller classroom settings that are like life skills programs or autism programs or, learning assistance programs. There's different programs here in BC in the high schools, and the kids get sent to those usually when they're designated.
Now, this might almost be like a, pardon my ignorance sort of thing, but what happens after high school, once they sort of go out on their own, they don't have a special education assistant at their side 24/7, so to speak, during the school day? What, obviously there are mild cases where, I know certain kids who have autism that they're not watched over every day. They just go out, do their own thing, and it's good. They're almost like, as you said, a person without a disorder like that. But what happens to, I guess there are programs just in the real world. It doesn't have to be attached to school that they're always, they kind of do have a assistant. Is that the case or what?
Like group homes and stuff.
Maybe.
But a lot of these kids are going to live at home with their parents for the majority of their lives, right? Yeah, but Tough to say for me, man. I work in the
'Cause you don't-
elementary school level,
yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't keep in contact once they're gone, really. The odd kid I've seen, I've heard from, but they're still at home with their parents. And so, no, I don't know, man. Tough to say. But I know that, I mean, if parents aren't around and they're getting older, then probably like group homes and whatnot. A buddy of mine has worked in an adult setting or a group home setting, and there are, you know, special needs people do live on their own. Like you said, you've seen them out and about. And
if it's a mild case,
yeah, you know. But they still can receive support as well. Like they can have someone come in that's hired from a certain service or a group or whatever that has special needs or special education training, and they can come in to the home and help them with, you know, cooking and doing their life skills or taking them out grocery shopping. So there's that. But I mean, I don't know, man.
Do you have any interest working with older kids, whether it be high school or
high school, maybe?
But no,
high school, maybe,
adult,
but not adults. No.
Why is that?
I don't think that. Like I said earlier, I like the reward of seeing these kids grow. I like the potential of growth within the student or within the child or within the person, and I feel like elementary school is where these kids are the most moldable and malleable, and they're, you know, they can grow to their fullest potential, whereas an adult has already gone through all those sort of life aspects of things, and they've had the support throughout all those years that it would take way longer to see any growth in an adult.
It's like a normal person. It's like a human being without, you know, a disorder or whatever. You know, I'm a lot smarter than I was when I was 8 years old. That same goes for every single person on the planet.
Yeah.
And the growth of just growth in general, whether it be physical or mental or your intelligence.
Well, or like yourself, say like you want to go learn a sport. You know, if you picked up that sport when you were 3 years old or 4 years old, you'd be awesome by the time you are now.
Sure.
But if you pick up that sport today, it's going to take you way longer to learn it than it did when you were a little kid.
And it just gets even more extreme once you say, if you try and play a sport for the very first time, you're what, 30, 34, 35? 36, okay.
Yeah.
So earlier, I was saying you grew up in the 80s, too old, now too young. It balances out. But if you try something for the first time, good luck, right?
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So there were a few questions in the chat earlier. Tim Bissell from Bloody Elbow, my fellow colleague, fellow Canadian too.
Timmy B.
He's in Toronto. He says, let me find it here. He says, I cannot find it. That's great. He says, would like to hear Jimmy's take on the recent teacher strike and how that affected him. And okay, so there's one more. So first, answer that one. The teacher strike happened, what, a year? How long ago was that?
In BC, we had a teacher strike like maybe 3 years ago.
It's been a bit.
It's been a few years. So I'm not, as we spoke, I'm not officially a teacher. I'm a different union than teachers. So we weren't allowed to cross their picket lines because we were in solidarity with them, right? So we had to go and we had to picket, but we got like minuscule amounts of money a day. Like, I mean, like pocket change. It was definitely not enough. So we were lucky enough because as support workers, we can go on employment insurance in the summertime because we're actually laid off in June, at the end of June, and then rehired in September. Specifically, like that's what they say. But officially, I mean, we have a job all the time. It's just legality reasons. They say we're laid off. We're hourly employees, so we can go on EI in the summertime. Okay. So lucky for us with that teacher strike, the teachers striked right in September. So we got to continue on with our EI. So it actually benefited us a little bit.
Interesting. Liam Hughes, I should say. He says, it's more of a comment, but I think it's something you could touch on briefly. Hope they pay him decently in the UK, where Liam is from. That job is barely above minimum wage. You mentioned earlier that when you that buddy of yours, when he got you into this, he talked about how it was a decent, a well-paying job. I assume it's a bit more than minimum wage, which I guess that's the case in the UK.
It's more than minimum wage. Let me say it's support staff members deserve to be paid a lot more than what we get paid for what we deal with. A lot of people on the outside think that we should be paid the same as what a teacher gets paid. I completely agree with that, obviously. But when I said that it was decent pay, as I said, I started this job when I was 20 years old. So back then it was decent pay. I was still living at home with my parents. It was awesome pay at that time. Is it decent pay now? Yeah, it's pretty shit if you ask me.
Sure. Tim also adds he would like to know, as an educator, I guess, I mean, as you said, you're not
we're
officially
considered educated. No, we're considered educators.
So he says, how does he feel as an educator about the change of government in BC?
I'm an NDP guy, so I'm pleasantly, optimistically looking forward to what John Horgan can do in BC. I think we had a by-election this last weekend on Saturday for school trustees. So that's what, we're going to see what's going to happen with the school board in the not so distant future, within the next 6 months kind of thing. We'll see what happens with it. But obviously I wasn't a fan of Christy Clark.
I know we touched on this a little bit.
This is a special ed educator assistant podcast here, eh? Like, just work.
Yeah, I know. That's beyond combat. What I was going to say, though, was we touched on this briefly. I don't think as much as I wanted to, but as far we were sort of talking about it when we were talking about not needing to be Albert Einstein and needing other certain skills. What if you have to say, one or two, skills or things you need to be successful in this position? What is that? I mean, is it having patience and knowing how, having patience to be able to deal with these kids, and obviously you need to love your job. That goes without saying. That's for any teacher, especially elementary.
That's for any job, really.
More so
you
for
should
teachers.
love. Yeah, true. You should love your job, but otherwise, why are you doing it? A lot of people out there hate their jobs. Sure. I agree, and I think a lot of those people are in it for money. And I myself am not in the. As I said, it's crap pay. I'm not. I mean, I get by. I'm not. It's no, by no means. But because I love this job, I don't stress about much in life. I could use more money. Hell, I buy lotto tickets. I hope to win the lottery, but that's far-fetched. But what I mean is, like, patience. You say, yeah, for sure, I need patience. I need a bit of, I need to be modest in terms of, dealing with these kids, sort of a bit of humbleness. Hell, I need patience dealing with you, Nick.
So true.
I don't know. There's so many different things you need. You need to be kind. You need to, like, I couldn't be a complete dickhead to these kids like I am to you guys in our chat room.
Sure. I mean, you also need to, I feel like you also need to be, pay very close attention to fine detail, because you need to, again, you can, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine you have to very, almost analyze the kids you're working with.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, you know what? Last year, I had this said to me best. I was in a meeting, and it was about the student that I worked with, and, like, he was very difficult, man. Like, we had tons and tons of meetings and whatnot, and they said, Jeremy, you're constantly doing stuff and constantly, like, micromanaging things. And I'm like, I do? Like, I don't even notice it, right? So there are things that I do in my day-to-day that are so minuscule to me that I don't even notice that I'm doing them, but other adults around can see that I'm, you know, making sure that something doesn't happen here because I've noticed that, you know, like his body has moved a certain way or his eyes are darting in different directions and whatnot. So I guess that's something you need, is to be able to micromanage, or what's the word? Just be able to analyze these, you know, different children's behavior. But you wouldn't be able to just come in and do that, right? Like, I wouldn't be able to come in and see a brand new kid and just like be able to do it. I have to observe for a while and sort of, you know, get the lay of the land.
Yes. One more question from Liam. It's a dumb question. You may remember you've co-hosted the MMA Circus with me a number of times. I didn't want to bring dumb questions since this. I was, you know, going to save that for the circus, but I can't just ignore a question like that. So he says, is it wrong to put sugar on top of maple syrup pancakes?
Fuck
of course.
No, man.
Why would you put granulated sugar when you already have maple syrup?
Well, I probably wouldn't put sugar on it, but you know what? I'm weird when it comes to like stuff like that, man. I like
sugary,
this morning,
you know, fruit, strawberries, whatever, have, you know, pineapple, sure, blueberries, but I mean, not whole, you know, granulated sugar.
No, but like when like this morning I had waffles, but and some people are gonna think this is weird as shit, but I toast my waffles. I put peanut butter on top of the waffles, which is fine and dandy. Great. But so I have waffles. I put peanut butter on top of those. I put a fried egg on top of that. And then I put syrup on top of that.
Okay. That's a bit of a stretch.
But you can't knock it until you try it. With a runny yolk going down over the peanut butter too. I know. My wife says
a lot of goop in that.
Oh yeah. She says I'm gross, but probably tastes so good, man. That's just like I had a peanut butter omelet with cheese in it.
You're an interesting man. You're an interesting man, Jimmy Brand. So the couple more things I want to touch on real brief. Will be done very shortly. So sure. Along with, you know, dealing and working with special ed kids, I think just not even just if you're working with them, but just special needs kids in general, there's a lot of PC that comes with it, being politically correct. You know, it's sort of with everything. There's a lot of terms you can and cannot say. To me, you're not, you know, you're going to be PC guy. No, you're not the most PC guy. Even just the other day, you know, you said in the MMA Circus staff chat that
I don't know if you should say this. No, I'm just joking.
No, I'm good. You said if there's any, you know, PC guy here, it's Justin Perro, and clearly that's not you. But not to say you're not, you know, politically incorrect. But what are your thoughts in general about?
I know when and who to be politically correct with.
Sure.
I told my wife the other day that I saw something while I was driving home, and I wanted to tweet about it so bad. But if I had tweeted about it, I probably would have been fired from my job. So I might tell you off air.
Good. I'm looking forward to that. Let's wrap it up right now. But as far as, you know, these words, you know, handicapped, disabled, they're not even all that bad. There are certain things that aren't terrible, but they're still, right now in 2017, not PC. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't mind either of those words. There's other words that you could say that are definitely.
You take it a bit farther.
Yeah,
we'll say 50 years ago that certainly are not anymore.
Exactly. I don't think calling someone. I mean, there's people that are like Special Olympics. These people have disabilities, right? You know, things like that. Like a person who's disabled, I wouldn't say is they're special needs because they're different than others. But I think a person with a disability is more so someone who has lost a limb, has, you brain damage from an accident. I personally don't consider a disability something that you are born with in terms of your mental level, unless you're born with, no arms or something like that.
Right. And then I guess sort of,
but that's just my 2 cents, right?
And then you have people saying, "Oh, a mental disability," and it's sort of like taking what it shouldn't be and making it what it, as far as
exactly.
You saying a disability is not that, but then when you put the word mental in front of it, it is, but it's still not really acceptable. But
I don't mean mental in terms of like your mental. I mean like your brain, right?
Yes, having autism or Down syndrome or what have you.
Yeah.
Many things out there on certain spectrums. So that's good to.
And the spectrum is a key word, like you're saying. We say not all typical kids are the same, not all special needs kids are the same. But then you can break it down even more. Like autism is a spectrum.
Sure.
So
yeah.
There's kids on this end of the spectrum and kids on this end of the spectrum, and then everything in between. So you could be autistic and be either side of the spectrum as well.
Yeah, I mean, even as I mentioned earlier, like I know a kid in my mind. I don't interact with him. He's years younger than me, but I know of him who's autistic. But you can tell sometimes he, maybe an anger management problem, but for the most part, he looks or he seems like pretty much a normal kid. And
that's it. 99% of these kids, you put in a group photo, you're never going to be able to pick them out from the bunch. You'll pick someone else probably because their parents got them a bad haircut or something.
Yes. A lot of kids are diagnosed, officially with something, but sometimes it's pretty hard to tell. So I think that's something people don't realize sometimes, that you can have autism, but you can look. So it brings me to my last sort of thing I want to touch on. You can be a freaking UFC fighter with a mild case of autism. John Howard, we found out, I think, a year ago or so, that John Howard has a mild case, and I'm assuming it's a mild case because it's nothing severe, obviously, going by what he does for a living and just the fact that we would have never been able to tell. And that's
I mean, he's carried on plenty of interviews and whatnot.
Sure, of course. I mean, we both have interviewed him.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Just in general, John Howard, a former UFC fighter, I think he's headlining a PFL card or PFL or CS is what it is. He's headlining like next week.
I mean, as I said, there's the TV show. There's these kids that are doctors. There's kids that are, they're out there and they're, who knows? I'm sure there's cops out there that have autism. There's plenty of cases out there that, I mean, being an MMA fighter is like probably not something that's too crazy in terms of having autism or whatnot. I mean, really, you're in the gym. These kids are autistic. Kids are usually very OCD, right? Which is obsessive compulsive disorder. They like things a certain way, and they like to do them that way all the time. And fighting is something that you do the same way all the time. You're in the gym, you're training, you're hitting pads, you're training jiu-jitsu, and it's all very technical. And that's something that a lot of these kids like. So to throw someone into the gym and be technical and to throw them into the cage, and a lot of them have extraordinary strength for some odd reason. There's a term out there that I'm not going to use, but so it's not too, it's not thrown out of left field by any means.
Yeah, well, that is it. That is it for episode 1 of Beyond Combat. If there's anything else you would like to add before you plug your social media and anything else, but anything on the topic of your day, career, your job, what you do, anything you feel that is worth touching on that I didn't cover, go ahead. But I think we covered the main bases.
We definitely hit all aspects of my day-to-day life in terms of work. Not much else to touch on other than the fact that I hate watching the Canucks play hockey right now, especially against your Winnipeg Jets the other night. Last night they looked pretty good, 3-0 win against Ottawa. But other than that, they sort of suck.
Yeah, the Winnipeg Jets, I mean, I think they have a losing record still. They were doing okay. They had 2 in a row, I think, but back to their losing ways last night, I think, against Columbus. I don't pay attention really until playoffs, and by then the Jets are gone. So I don't watch the Jets all that often. I watch many playoff games, but unfortunately that's only involved the Jets once since they returned, and that was only 4 games.
As I said, try to keep up with as much sports as possible because day to day I like to do my DraftKings with this guy at work, and I try to beat him as much as possible. We don't do head-to-heads or anything like that, so I never know who actually wins, but It's just fun comparing lineups.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, that is it. Thank you guys for watching episode 1 of Beyond Combat. We will be back 2 weeks from today. Unless anything goes wrong. I found this fun. I thought learned a lot. I think our audience probably took away some cool stuff. And just, I mean, most of the people watching are MMA, people, whether they're a journalist or a fan or what have you. And I think this is also, a topic that we're in general not exposed to. So I think this was fun. Anything you'd like to plug, your social media? I know you said you have a podcast in the works per se, or perhaps I should say. And of course, the site you run each and every day.
Yeah, obviously check out MmaCircus.com. I do some writing for One Championship. You can check out my pieces. They never have a byline for some reason. They're always featured pieces over at onefc.com. I'm not afraid to say that I write for them.
Not good journalism, apparently.
Apparently, whatever. Check me out at JeremyBrand604 on Twitter, at Jeremy_604 on Instagram. Yeah, this podcast, I don't know. Make sure you follow and subscribe to the Wonder Brand Show on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher. That's where the new podcast will drop. Sound quality might not be that great. I possibly might just do it on my cell phone. It's going to be a fun little short one, probably about 10-15 minutes long. But it'll be interesting. It's definitely not MMA related. It's going to be sort of general topics. There might be some games. There might be some other stuff. There might be guests from time to time. It's all depending who's in my car. So that might give you a general gist of what's going on. But yeah, just check me out. You can find me all over the place. JeremyBrand604, Jeremy_604. Find me, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Mess with me if you want. I don't care.
Alrighty, you guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find my MMA writing over at bloodyelbow.com. Go check out my other podcasts. I seem to have too many nowadays, but that's great. The Mma Circus is where I do talk about the Ultimate Fighting Championship and other MMA promotions. I host that each and every week with Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence. We did episode 133 last night. Good Lord. Yeah, we're coming up, I guess, the 150, and yeah, we've been doing it for a bit.
Nice. Oh, also, check out MMA Circus on YouTube. We got a cool web series called Mat Wars. Follows a local grappler, Micah Breakfield, around from gym to gym. He takes on local talent. There's monetary prize for anyone who beats him. It's a 6-episode season. We've done 3 episodes. We got 3 more coming up. Season 2 is going to be even cooler. I'm not going to give you the info on it, but season 2 is going to be pretty dope. Not necessarily is it going to just be one person. That's all I'm going to say. But make sure you follow it. Mat Wars. It's featured on the UG. It's also featured on MMA Circus YouTube page.
Sneak peek to all our Beyond Combat listeners. I know there's many out there. Anyways, as I was saying, the MMA Circus, go check it out. We talked about MMA and really everything MMA. Go check it out, episode 133 here on this YouTube channel. Of course, every podcasting platform basically you can name as well. My other show on this YouTube channel exclusively, it is called Before the Battle. I hosted each and every fight week with MMA Circus, Wesley Riddle, and MMA Fighting's Jed Mashu. We will be doing that tomorrow night. I can't remember the time. I think 8:30 Eastern. I'll have to double check. But sometime in the evening, we'll be breaking down the glorious card that is UFC Fight Night 118 in Poland, Cerrone versus Till. That is it. Thank you very much for listening. I really do appreciate you guys listening to this first show. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. And I hope it'll be something you come back to. I feel like it was really refreshing just not talking about MMA and recording it. It was a lot of fun for me. Thank you all for listening. Go give us a thumbs up. Go subscribe to the MMA Circus YouTube channel, the one you're on right now, if you haven't already. Comment, give us, let us know what you like, what you didn't like about the show. And that is all. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night. Goodbye.